Good evening, grade 7. Thanks for tuning in to see the answers to the practice test you wrote today. Keep in mind that the answers to this test will be very close to the answers you're going to write tomorrow. So please make sure that all of the questions we have here, you show the appropriate work. If you don't have any work shown, please copy it down as you watch this video. And tomorrow when you come into class, it will benefit you significantly. So question 1 says the probability of getting 3 tails when you toss 1 coin twice is 1 out of 6. Well, first of all, the possibility of getting 3 tails when you toss a coin twice, you can't get 3 tails if you toss anything twice, because the best you can do is get 2 tails. You would never be able to get 3 tails if you toss that coin twice. So the answer, if you were to interpret it, has to be false, because you can't get anything. It's a 0% probability. It's kind of a trick question. It's actually quite a stupid question, but anyway, we'll go on to the second question. It says, using a 6-sided die, the probability of rolling an even number is 1 out of 3. Now, this is an interesting thing. We only saw this a couple times. Probably the better way of looking at that is 1 out of 3. So you have 3 possible choices. One of them is even number. And the answer to that is, of course, false. Because if you look at a 6-sided dice, we have 6 possible outcomes. Of those 6 possible outcomes, 3 of the 6 are even. So 3 out of 6 is the probability. If I reduce that to lowest terms, both are divisible by a factor of 3. Leave me with an equivalent term of 1 out of 2. That means for every 2 numbers on the dice, one of them is an even number. So the answer is, again, false. The probability is actually 1 out of 2. Question 3, using a 6-sided die, the probability of rolling a 5 or a 6 is 1 out of 2. Again, there are our possible outcomes for this. So out of the 6 possible numbers, those which are 5 and 6, there are 2 which are 5 and 6. If I reduce this to lowest terms, both are divisible by a factor of 2, we get 1 out of 3. So really, question 2 and question 3 are actually flipped in terms of their answer. It's actually false again. Question 4, when rolling 2 6-sided die, you have a better chance of rolling a sum, which is a fancy word for addition, adding answer, that is odd, than a sum that is even. Well, let's draw a table here. So when I draw my table, this is what it looks like. And I can clearly see when I look at this table that there are 36 possible outcomes, right? 36 possible outcomes. And of those 36 possible outcomes, if I was to put a check mark in all the odd boxes, every box that has a red check mark has a sum that is an odd number. And if we look here, if I just choose this one here at random, that would be a 4 plus a 3. So this box would have a sum of 7, which is an odd number. And if I put a blue check mark or a green check mark in all the even, I would find that I have 18 green check marks and 18 red check marks. And again, if I took any one at random, if I took this one here, this would be a 6. Oh, sorry, that's not right. Forget that one there. A 6 on this way and a 6 on this way. This square would have a sum of 12, which is an even number. So there are 18 and 18 of each. So the answer is, when rolling 2 6-sided dice, you have a better chance of rolling a sum that is odd than a sum that is even, is false. You have an equal chance. Both are 50-50. Question 5, the formula for determining the probability is probability equals all outcomes divided by favorable outcomes. The answer is false. Probability is equal to favorable outcomes divided by possible outcomes, okay, or all outcomes. So we have that flipped, so it is false. Question 6, when rolling 2 dice, the probability of rolling a 2 on one die and a 1 on the other die is 1 out of 18, okay? This is kind of a tricky one because it doesn't say in that order. It just says 1 on one die and 1 on the other. So using this grid again, right, we can see that there are 36 possibles. So if I put a check mark in a 2 on one die, so here's a 2 on one die and a 1 on the other. This check mark would work. But this is a 2 on 1. These two are actually both 2-1. It's a 1-2 and a 2-1. So a 2 on one die and a 1 on the other. There's actually 2 chances out of 36 possible outcomes, which if I reduce it to lowest terms is 1 chance out of 18. So actually question 6 is a true statement. There is a 1 out of 18 chance of rolling a 2 on one die and a 1 on the other. For question 7, the probability that event happens is 4 chances out of 12. What is the probability that the event will not happen? Well, if I take 100%, which would be 12 parts out of 12, that's 100%, and I subtract from it the probability that something will happen, that's this, there will be, oh, sorry, that's 8, sorry. 8 chances out of 12 that it will not happen, right? If I take all of the possibilities, happening and not happening, all of them, subtract the possibility that it will happen as 4 over 12, that means that this must be not happen. And when I look over here, I'm a little worried at first until I see D, 8 out of 12, which is your answer. Question 8 says, if you spin the spinner 30 times, how many times might you expect it to land on red? So obviously, I have to know that since these are all equally spaced, the probability of it landing on red is, there are 3 possibilities. One of those is red. So 1/3 of 30, right, is 10, right? 10, 10, and 10. So it should land 10 times on blue, 10 times on green, 10 times on red for 30. So equally spaced, it should land on red 10 times. There are 14 marbles in a bag, 4 red, 4 orange, 5 green, and 1 blue. You take 1 marble out of the bag. What is the probability of getting a red or blue marble? So for this one, we have to figure out, well, how many marbles are in that bag in total? There are 14 marbles in total. Now, how many of them are red or blue? Well, there are 4 red, and there's 1 blue. That means there's 5 out of 14 marbles. So our answer for the probability of it being chosen as a red or a blue is 5 chances out of 14. Question 10, a spinner is divided into 6 equal parts, 3 green, 2 blue, and 1 red. What is the probability of spinning green? So again, there's 6 equal sections, so there are 6 possible outcomes, 3 of which are green. So we have 3 chances out of 6, and when I look over here, I'm like, oh no, there's no 3 chances out of 6. But if I reduce this to lowest terms, both are divisible by a factor of 3. So 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6, so therefore your answer is 1/2. Question 11 says, how many possible outcomes are there when you roll 2 6-sided dice? And again, if I right-click here and paste that, there is my table that shows all of the possible outcomes. So how many possible outcomes are there when you roll 2 6-sided dice? There are 36 possible outcomes. D. Each letter of the word mathematics is written on a separate card and placed in a bag. Siobhan draws 1 card from the bag. What is the probability of her drawing a letter that is a vowel? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 letters in the word mathematics. Vowels are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 11 would be the probability of her drawing a vowel. So therefore your answer is B. Question 13, a spinner is divided into equal parts numbered 1 to 5. What is the probability of spinning 2 5s in a row? So in order to solve this, we need to make a table, or you could do a tree diagram too. Some people still like doing that. But for me, I'm going to make this particular table. And when I do that, I can clearly see there are 25 possible combinations, right? And what's the probability of spinning 2 5s in a row? Well, there's only 1 square out of those 25 that is 5 5s. That's 1 out of 25. And the problem is when I look at this, I don't see it over here. So what you have to realize is that 1/25 is equal to 4/100ths, which is equal to 4/100ths. And once I realize that, then I can clearly see that my answer is D. It's 4/100ths, which also, if I wanted to say it a different way, there's a 4% probability of spinning a 5 and a 5. Question 14, it says, how many possible outcomes are there when you flip a coin and roll a 6-sided dice at the same time? So for this one, I want to draw another table. And what we see when we make my table is that I have 12 possible outcomes. Right here would be a heads 2, here would be a tails 3, and so on and so forth. So there are 12 possible outcomes. Question 15, you roll 2 6-sided die. What is the probability that the sum of the numbers showing is greater than 3? So again, I need to use this wonderful table here. So what is the probability that I have a sum greater than 3? So I have to add these together. So if I put the sum inside here, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 and 2 would be a 3. The sum of those would be 3. A 1 and a 3 would be, there would be 2, 3. This would be a sum of 4, a 5, a 6, and 7. And if I examine all of those, all those red numbers are actually the sum of the two numbers. How many are greater than 3? Well, all of them except for these 3 here. These 3 are the only ones that don't. So if 3 out of 36 don't, that must mean that 33 out of the 36 possible sums are are greater than 3. I look over here and I don't see that, so I have to reduce this probably. If I reduce this by a factor of 3, I have 11 over 12, which I now do see. And again, the answer is D. A lot of D's here. Question 16 says, which of the following could you use to simulate flipping a coin? Well, flipping a coin has 2 possible outcomes, right? So if you think about which of these 4 choices have 2 possible outcomes, the only one that has 2 possible outcomes is a spinner with 2 equal sections. All the rest, this would be out of 7, this would be out of 5, and this would be out of 3, but a coin has 2, so therefore your answer is D. Question 17 says, if you hit the ball 25% of the time you get to bat, how many hits would you expect to get at 40 at bats? So if I think this is 40 at bats, this is 40. All right, this is 50% of them, this is 25% of 40 hits. Right, 40 hits. If I divided 40 into 4 equal parts, each of these would be 10 hits. So the answer is you would expect to get 10 hits, which again is D, 10 hits. Question 18 says an ice cream store sells 5 different flavors of ice cream that can be topped with 5 different toppings. How many flavors of topping combinations are there? So again, topping A, topping B, topping C, and so on. And I guess toppings 1 through 5. If I was actually to make a table, I could see that these ice cream flavors versus toppings, I could have flavor A with topping 1, I could have flavor B with topping 2, I could have flavor C with topping 2, and so on and so forth. There are 25 possible combinations of ice cream / toppings, which is B. Question 19 says, Sam goes to a restaurant for lunch. He can order 1 food item and 1 drink item from the menu below. What is the probability that he will order a sandwich and a milk? So if I look at these, for food, there are pizza, there is sandwiches, there is tacos, there is hamburgers, and there is fries, none of which are really healthy meal choices. And there's milk, and there's water. So we can clearly see that there are overall 10 possible combinations, right? Of those, which one is a sandwich and milk? Only one choice out of 10, which makes it a 10% likelihood that he will order a sandwich with milk. Question 20 says, Scott's sock drawer has 6 green socks, 8 white socks, and 4 black socks. What is the probability that you'll put a white sock? Well, altogether there are 18 socks in his drawer, 8 of which are white. So if I look here, none of the choices are 8 out of 18. But if I reduce it to lowest terms, both are divisible by a factor of 2. 4 out of 9 is an option. So obviously all I had to do was see 8 out of 18 in lowest terms, and I get 4 out of 9. Question 21, almost very similar to question 20. Grade 7 class is 18 boys and 14 girls. If a student is picked at random, what is the probability of picking a boy? Well, there are 18 boys out of a total class size, and this is the tricky part. There were 32 total students in that class. And I had to actually figure that out by adding those two numbers together. So out of 32, uh, there are 18 boys out of 32. So what is the probability of picking a boy? 18 out of 32. If I divide both by a factor of 2, I get 9 over 16, which is question C, or answer C. Question 22 says, what color ball are you most likely to draw if you take one ball out of a bag that has 7 red balls, 12 green balls, 5 blue balls? This is the easiest question ever. 5 purple balls and 4 blue balls. Obviously, the most likely color to draw out is B. And if you got that one wrong, you really need to think about probability a little bit more. And finally, question 23 said a spinner is divided into 6 equal parts numbered 1 to 6. What's the probability of spinning 2 5s in a row? So if I was to draw this, I could see from this that the probability of spinning 2 5s in a row, there would be 5 possible outcomes in the first spin, or I could do this one, or the second spin, whichever, or vice versa. So out of the 25 possible combinations, only one of them is 5 5. So the probability is 1 out of 20. Oh, 6 equal parts. Oops. Let me just change this for a second. Hang on. There, that's better. So if you have 2 spinners, each with 6 equal parts, that's no different than a 6-sided dice. So if you think about the probability of spinning a 5-5, there's only 1 out of 36 of those that is a 1-1, or a 5-5, excuse me. So therefore your answer is A, 1 out of 36. Okay, hopefully this helped you. There will be a couple more questions on the test, like drawing a tree diagram, and a couple other questions. But overall, if you were able to handle these questions, plus your definitions, you should do very well tomorrow on your final test. Good luck to everyone.